You sit in the dark, watching the flickers of the campfire paint long, dancing shadows on the cave walls. You do not hold a heavy flint spear, nor do you carry scars from wrestling fearsome prehistoric beasts. Yet, the strongest hunters in your tribe look at you with a hidden, nervous fear whenever you speak. They know that a few whispered words from your mouth can destroy their reputation and social status by morning. In the ancient savanna, physical strength was crucial, but social information was the ultimate weapon of survival. Today, you might view gossip as a toxic habit that polite society should avoid at all costs. But evolutionary psychologists argue that sharing social secrets was the key technology that built human civilization. How did talking behind people's backs help your ancestors survive in a world ruled by giant predators? To understand this mystery, you must look at how the closest living relatives maintain order in the wild. Monkeys and apes spend up to 20% of their waking hours picking bugs off each other's fur. This physical grooming is not just about hygiene. It is how they build alliances and show mutual trust. But what exactly happens when the group size grows too large for physical grooming to remain practical in the wild? An ape tribe cannot grow beyond 50 members before the social structure begins to collapse from lack of bonding. Your ancestors solved this biological bottleneck by inventing a revolutionary new way to groom each other from a distance. What was this revolutionary distant grooming tool, and how did it change the way early humans interacted forever? Prehistoric human evolution proved that language emerged specifically to replace physical grooming with vocal grooming in large, growing tribes. Instead of picking lice off one person, you could sit by the fire and groom 3 people at once. By telling stories and sharing social updates, your ancestors maintained their alliances without wasting valuable daylight hours in the forest. This vocal grooming allowed human groups to expand far beyond the natural limit of 50 individuals in the wild. This vocal connection established a strict cognitive limit of 150 stable relationships your brain can easily manage. To keep a group of 150 people cooperating, you needed to know who was trustworthy. You could not watch everyone yourself, so you relied on the gossip of others to filter out bad actors. Gossip became the first social database of humanity, tracking who was helpful and who was slacking off in the group. But did this primitive social registry only serve to spread rumors, or was it used to enforce tribal democracy? It actually became a lethal weapon used by the weak to keep ambitious leaders from seizing absolute power. In chimpanzee societies, the biggest alpha male rules through brute force and intimidation, taking whatever food he wants. But in early human hunter-gatherer bands, the social structure was fiercely egalitarian, meaning everyone was treated as equal. How did small, physically weaker humans prevent ambitious individuals from taking over and dominating the entire group? They did it by whispering behind their backs, aligning their opinions to form a united political front. What exactly happened to an arrogant hunter who grew too powerful? And how did gossip seal his tragic fate? Scientific studies of modern hunter-gatherers show how tribal societies aggressively humiliate arrogant leaders to maintain equal power among members. When a hunter boasted too much about his kill, the tribe would whisper jokes about him behind his back. They would call his meat small and useless, deflating his ego before he could claim any special privileges. If the hunter ignored the whispers and continued to dominate, the gossip would turn into a coordinated plan. The tribe would collectively decide to ignore his orders, refuse his meat, or even mock him to his face. In extreme cases of tyranny, the gossip network allowed the weak to coordinate the exile of the bully. You did not need to fight the giant alpha yourself. You just needed to ruin his reputation. This social leveling mechanism kept human societies remarkably equal for tens of thousands of evolutionary years in the past. But this political control was only half the struggle. The tribe also had to manage its daily survival economy. In a harsh environment, every single calorie gathered had to be shared fairly to keep the collective alive. How did the Whispering Network protect the tribe's food supply from lazy members who refused to work? Prehistoric communities relied on reputation as an informal contract to manage collective resources and solve the freerider problem. Without a modern legal system or police, reputation was the only currency that guaranteed your safety in the tribe. If gossip labeled you a thief, you would find yourself hungry and alone when winter arrived. What exactly did this reputation tracking look like in daily prehistoric life? And when did it occur most? During the day, your ancestors worked hard, gathering wild tubers or tracking game under the hot savanna sun. But you also watched your companions, noting who was working and who was resting in the shade. You did not confront the lazy member directly, as that would cause a dangerous physical conflict in the open. Instead, your ancestors waited until the sun set and the protective campfire was lit for the cool evening. Around the fire, you whispered your observations to your close allies, building a consensus of distrust against them. This gossip acted as an invisible fence, keeping selfish behaviors from destroying the tribe's precious internal peace. If you had a good reputation, you received the best cuts of meat and the warmest sleeping spots. If your reputation was ruined, your survival prospects plummeted, and you faced the ultimate threat of isolation. But how did these daytime observations transition into the magical, social stories told around the night fires? Researchers studying surviving tribes have documented a profound split between how humans talk during the day and at night. Observation data shows that daylight talk is almost exclusively focused on physical survival, food gathering, and economic tasks. What these studies reveal is a beautiful cognitive transition that occurs the moment the sun begins to set. During the bright daylight hours, 70% of all tribal conversation is about work, coordinates, and complaints. But once the sun went down, the tone of the conversations changed completely in the dark. How did the content of their discussions shift at night? And what did they talk about? Comparative research reveals that 80% of nighttime fireside conversation is dedicated to storytelling, history, and social gossip. The darkness of the night erased individual grievances, allowing the group to focus on their shared culture. They talked about absent members, analyzing their behavior, and reinforcing the moral rules of the tribe. The campfire became a stage where reputations were built, destroyed, and rebuilt through clever storytelling under the stars. These fireside stories were not just gossip, they were the oral laws that governed your ancestors' daily lives. By agreeing on who was good and who was bad, the tribe aligned their moral values together. This alignment was crucial for survival, as it allowed members to trust each other in danger. If you knew the tribe agreed on moral rules, you could sleep peacefully in the dark. But what exactly happened to those who repeatedly broke these rules and ignored the warning whispers of others? They faced the most terrifying punishment a social animal can experience: absolute social exclusion from the campfire. To be ignored by the tribe was not just lonely, it physically altered the human brain and biology. How exactly does the human brain process the painful experience of being left out of the social circle? Psychologists have scanned the brains of people experiencing exclusion, revealing a shocking and painful biological connection. The brain processes social rejection in the exact same region that registers intense physical pain from injury. Why exactly did evolution link the pain of gossip exclusion to the pain of physical wounds and injuries? In the prehistoric world, a physical wound could heal, but absolute social exclusion meant certain death for you. If the tribe stopped sharing food and warmth with you, you could not survive the freezing winter alone. Your brain evolved to treat social exclusion as a life-threatening emergency, activating intense physical pain signals in response. This intense pain kept you aligned with the tribe, ensuring you conform to the group's rules and expectations. Therefore, shunning, or ostracism, was the ultimate enforcement tool of the prehistoric gossip network to maintain order. It proved that the whisper of a woman was far mightier than the flint spear in the wild. You could dodge a spear, but you could not escape the unspoken judgment of your peers. This constant social surveillance created a self-policing society, where everyone watched everyone else around the campfire. This leads directly to the radical theory of why human language evolved in the first place across history. Did your ancestors learn to speak to trade tool coordinates? Or to talk behind backs about other people? Many evolutionary theorists suggest that the primary purpose of human language was always to gossip about other people. To build large, cooperative groups, humans needed to know who was sleeping with whom in the tribe. They needed to know who was honest, who was a liar, and who was a reliable ally. How exactly did this prehistoric gossip engine shape the structure of modern human speech and conversation today? Why does your modern brain still react to celebrity drama as if they were your neighbors? The cognitive revolution occurred 70,000 years ago, transforming human minds and allowing your ancestors to dominate the planet. Neanderthals actually had larger brains and stronger muscles, yet they lived in small, isolated bands that rarely crossed 50 members. They could communicate basic facts about prey, but they lacked the cognitive capacity to talk behind each other's backs. Because they could not gossip, they could not build trust with strangers or form large, cooperative hunting alliances. Homo sapiens used vocal whispers to track who was reliable, allowing multiple bands to unite against common threats. This gossip engine allowed your ancestors to form massive networks of trust, outcompeting other human species through cooperation. Language did not evolve to describe the physical world. It evolved to map the complex landscape of human relationships. By sharing social data, you could predict who would defend you and who would run away in battle. This tracking of allies and rivals shaped the structure of the human brain, prioritizing social intelligence over raw strength. Over thousands of generations, your ancestors' vocal tracts and brains adapted to make whispering easy, quiet, and fast. Speech became a tool of precision social engineering, allowing you to manipulate group dynamics with simple, quiet sounds. But how exactly did this verbal database expand when human populations grew and tribes began to trade over distances? When groups became too large, they could no longer rely on face-to-face whispers to track everyone's reputation. They had to invent new symbolic tools to carry social trust across long distances and vast, unknown territories. What did this expansion of trust look like? And how did gossip help create the very first international trade networks? Gossip was not just passive information. It was a complex psychological chess game your ancestors played daily for survival. You quickly realized that controlling the flow of secrets allowed you to manipulate how the entire tribe viewed your rivals. A subtle whisper at the right moment could easily elevate a weak ally or quietly destroy a dangerous political enemy. This constant game of social chess birthed a deep, permanent anxiety inside the human mind. The fear of judgment. You became obsessed with your self-image, constantly wondering what your peers whispered about you when you walked away. This social paranoia was not a mental defect. It was a necessary survival radar, keeping your reputation clean. In a world where your status decided whether you ate or starved, tracking your public image was life or death. You learned to wear social masks, hiding your true thoughts to conform to the moral expectations of the tribe. The tribe's collective opinion became a powerful, invisible prison, forcing every individual to fall in line or face exile. This psychological warfare allowed humans to maintain order, replacing physical violence with the quiet threat of social death. You traded the physical scars of the wild for the silent, internal scars of constant social anxiety and judgment. For thousands of generations, this emotional tax was relatively manageable because your tribe remained small and highly familiar. You only had to worry about the opinions of the 150 people who actually knew your name. But what happens when this delicate survival radar is suddenly plugged into a global network of billions of judging eyes? What happens when the whispers of your tiny prehistoric village are amplified into a deafening, global digital storm? The internet has turned the entire planet into a single, massive prehistoric village, exposing your brain to endless judgments. Social media algorithms exploit your evolutionary urge to track reputations, driving you to participate in public online shunning. Cancel culture is not a modern invention. It is simply the digital version of prehistoric exile at global scale. This constant digital surveillance keeps you in a state of hypervigilance, as if you are always being watched. To find peace, you must consciously limit your digital campfire and focus on your physical tribe of friends. By prioritizing face-to-face relationships, you drastically reduce social anxiety and align your mind with your ancient biology. Gossip was never a design flaw. It was the vital tool that allowed humans to cooperate and survive. Without the whispered rumor, there would be no modern cities, no laws, and no shared tribal faith. The next time you hear a juicy rumor, remember its ancient and powerful evolutionary history in the wild. Your mind is not being malicious. It is simply trying to keep you safe and connected to the group. You are still the same tribal animal, gathering around modern screens that closely mimic the old campfires. Your mind seeks connection in the dark, looking for the safety of the ancient tribe and allies. You listen to the whispers of the wind, hoping to decode the social rules that govern your survival. For this network of social secrets is the only thing that keeps your modern society together today. So sit in the dark, watching the flickers of the campfire paint long, dancing shadows on the cave walls.